So before we get into that, obviously what role does environment play in the person's development? What I want to do is temperature warning. Is that something that we need to worry about?
What's that?
Temperature warning.
Oh, I hope not.
Oh.
I've never seen that before.
All right, if you guys get hot, just let me know. So what role does environment play? I'll back up and give you guys some background information on myself. Like I said, my name is Tavon Parker. I come from York, Pennsylvania, so it's about an hour and a half drive, which isn't too far. We're still in the same state. You guys are closer to Penn State though, right?
About an hour.
Yeah, so we're about like 2.5, 3 hours from Penn State.
Yeah.
So born and raised in York City, it's really a small city. It's like 5 square miles. You can walk from one side of the city to the other side of the city in about 20 minutes. So growing up, everybody kind of knew each other. And the next slide, it talks about risk factors. But this is important for you guys to know with your major, your choice of education, because the risk factors are ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And what the ACEs do, it's actually the papers that I passed around. I'm gonna have you guys fill out in a little while. Did we pass them around?
Yes, we did.
So the ACEs, what they do is they take a list of what they call risk factors and ask you all these questions. And the higher the risk factors are, the more likely that child is going to experience adverse childhood experiences. The lower the risk factors are, the more likely that child will be successful. The same thing with the protective factors. So all of this on a piece of paper. So what I didn't know when I was growing up was that they have all these little check marks. So growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 6 years old. My older brother was 8 years old. And I'll never forget, because that was around the time I started kindergarten. And I started acting out of kindergarten and getting in trouble, and I didn't really understand why. And then as I started to grow up, I ended up getting kicked out of my elementary school. It's kind of hard to get kicked out of elementary school, but I guess enough's enough, right? And I ended up going to a different elementary school, and growing up, all I could ever remember was playing basketball, and it was just me and my brother. Right? And I ended up being good at basketball. Again, it was a preconceived notion that I learned because as a black student athlete, a lot of people that looked like me played basketball, football. Right? But I didn't realize how many other sports were out there. I didn't realize how many opportunities were out there and how many other things that we could do. So growing up in a small city, I played basketball, and I'll never forget my mom telling me the only way I would go to college is if I got a scholarship. Right? She'll take financial aid out, but her goal was for me and my brother to get a scholarship. After all, she graduated from college, and she wanted us to follow in her footsteps. So I ended up playing basketball throughout high school. I ended up being a 1,000-point scorer. I guess I was kind of good, right? I ended up being a 1,000-point scorer and getting a scholarship to go to Millersville University, but I lacked the proper perspective. I didn't know exactly how to be successful in college. Right? I didn't feel like high school necessarily prepared me to be on my own and to do what I needed to do in college. Things like study skills or study habits. I didn't even know where the library was when I went to Millersville University. But I can tell you what, I was really good at basketball. So I kept playing basketball at Millersville University, and my brother came too. We're the only brothers to score 1,000 points in high school. We went to Millersville, we was doing pretty good. But the thing they don't tell me, what I didn't know about college compared to high school, is that you can be good at basketball, but if you're not good at school, it kind of doesn't work. So I ended up losing my scholarship, coming back to my small city, coming back to the environment that I worked so hard to get out of, and ended up going right to the same crowd that I just left and worked so hard to get away from. And I ended up doing the same things that they were doing. So the reason why I do what I do now is because I feel like I can relate to people that make bad decisions. I feel like I can relate to people that lack perspective. I feel like I can relate to people that don't have this whole thing called life figured out yet. Because when I went back to my city, instead of trying to start my lawn care business back up, instead of following my girlfriend at the time who was in college, I decided I was going to start selling drugs and ended up going to jail. And that was the most impactful 14 months of my life, because while I was in jail, that's when I had this paradigm shift, and I realized exactly what I was doing to my society. We had a 2-year-old daughter. I realized exactly what I was doing to my family. Everything that I was fighting against, I was actually perpetuating. So in that 14 months, that's when my life changed. I ended up getting boot camp, so I got early release. And once I got out of jail, everything kind of went fast forward. I decided, okay, instead of doing the illegal entrepreneur aspect, I want to do the legal part. Instead of trying to run the streets, I was just going to worry about my family. And I'll never forget, because it's like momentum doesn't know positive from negative. And as soon as I started doing the positive things, boom, life came crashing down. And my brother ended up getting shot and killed on February 26th of 2020. So as soon as I got out of jail, I had 2 years with my brother. He ended up getting shot and killed, and I realized that this thing called life isn't exactly what I thought it was. that in fact, this thing called life, the more people you can impact, the more people you can help, the better your life ends up being. Because when my brother told me, and I'll never forget this story, but growing up and I had 3 brothers, me and my one brother would go play basketball, AAU tournaments, go do a bunch of different things, and my other brother, he never went. And he told me one time that his mom couldn't afford to send him to the things that my mom could afford to send us to, so he didn't get that opportunity. So that's what I call exposure. A lot of times growing up in these impoverished areas, you don't get exposed to all life has to offer. And one of the things that I learned is you don't know what you don't know. And to break it down in simpler terms, you don't know how big this world is. I went on my first cruise about 2 weeks ago, and it blew my mind because when I first got out of prison, I was on parole and I couldn't go, and my wife and my daughter went. And they came back and they had all these great stories. If I told you a cruise ship had 17 floors, you probably wouldn't believe it until you see it for yourself. It was like pools, and it was amazing. But again, because of one decision I made after I lost my scholarship, I couldn't have that experience with them. See, life is all about the experiences and how you can impact somebody else. So after my brother got shot and killed, I realized, wow, a lot of people don't have exposure. A lot of people are exposed to things outside of their neighborhood, outside of their city, outside of their block. How can we start exposing people to these things? So I started this nonprofit called the Advantage Program, and the goal of the Advantage Program is to expose these kids to life outside of things they're readily accessible to. And as simple as once a month, we go on a field trip. So we're going to HBCUs, we're going to college basketball and football games, professional basketball and football games, the Constitution Center. We just try to get them out of the city. And you know what never surprises me? As you get out of the city and you see more things, your thoughts start to grow. Your dreams and your goals and your aspirations start to grow. And I think a lot of times when people end up on the wrong side of that judicial system, what happens is there's a lack of creativity, there's a lack of thought, there's a lack of things that they actually plan to do. So jumping back on track, here goes some examples of the risk factors that I mentioned. But what I want you guys to do, you can use yourself, you can use your own kids, your nephews, your nieces, any kid that you know. But I want you guys to take 5 minutes and fill out the risk factors from a level of 1 to 5. From a level of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. For example, it says, talk to me about your kids' friends. Does your kids hang out with a good friend group, or is there a lack of social support? So if you feel like whoever you're talking about, if it's yourself, if it's your niece, your nephew, your son, your daughter, if you feel like they have a good friend group, you'll put 5. If you feel like they don't, you'll put 1. So on and so forth. After you guys are done the risk factors, you can jump down to the protective factors and do the same thing. But really think about it. And after you guys get done, we'll talk about it in a couple minutes. All right, does anybody have all 5s? Sorry, it's fun to ask that. So we give these to the parents in the nonprofit that I have, and none of the parents ever have any 5s. In fact, they always tell me how their kids are angry. But somehow when I go to the schools have a different answer. So it's always an interesting dynamic. So how many of you guys have seen risk factors or any of these questions before? I heard you say you guys went over this before.
We haven't done it exactly like that, but we've talked about it.
So why do you guys think that these risk factors are important?
It singles out what that person needs to get the help for that certain aspect of it.
I like it. So it singles out what a person needs to be able to help with that certain aspect. Anybody else?
Shows what kind of support system they have.
Shows what kind of support system they have. I like that. One more?
Shows how surroundings can like influence people.
Shows how the surroundings can influence people. So all 3 of those answers are correct. These risk factors, for my part, having a nonprofit, obviously with the nonprofit we get funded, we get grants and stuff like that. We have to be able to measure our impact. So if a kid enters our program and they have all 5s on their risk factors, which we have. Some kids, a social worker or somebody in the justice system will refer them, a probation officer, a second chance program will refer a kid and they have all 5s. So when a kid comes in and they have all 5s, after they're with our program for 6 months, we show that their 5s start turning into 4s or start turning into 3s. Which is very important because now we can track the data that shows we're making an impact. We can show that a kid that enters this program and has high risk factors and low protective factors now has connection to a caring adult, now has good pro-social relations with their friends. So this gives us a way to track the data. Because believe it or not, police officers, judges, lawyers, everybody that's in that judicial system, you guys are gonna have to be able to gauge exactly what you're dealing with, because every situation and scenario is different. On top of what you're dealing with, you're gonna have to gauge, is this person a threat to themselves or society? The more connected a person is to pro-social relationships, a connected adult, and pro-social environments, the more likely that they're a risk to the community or to themselves. So that's my spiel on risk factors. I do think they're very important. And what I didn't realize growing up is how risk factors change. So for me, growing up in a two-family household, from 1 to 5, my risk factors would have been relatively low. As soon as my parents get divorced, what happens to my risk factors? They go up. As soon as both my parents get remarried, what happens to my risk factors? They go back down. So risk factors are relative and they can change, so they're not the end all be all, but they do give you an idea of what you can expect. So before I went to jail, obviously nobody's life's perfect. But what I realized is before I went to jail and after I went to jail, something was very similar in both of the scenarios. So before I went to jail, I lost my scholarship. I had financial stress, which is a fancy way of saying I was broke. A lack of a stable job, selling drugs, and lazy mindset. So the reason I have a lazy mindset is because my lack of a stable job led to me selling drugs, which I thought would cure the financial stress after I lost my scholarship. Like if I had numbers, I'd put like little number 1, 2, 3, 4. But then the funny thing is, after jail, I realized there was a parole, there was a record that was still affecting me to get a job, no ability to gain my passport. The passport was really big to me. That cruise changed my life. I had a curfew because I was on parole. I had legal fees and then just other restrictions. So what I realized was when I was creating this, if you look at the challenges before jail and you look at the challenges after jail, a lot of those challenges seem like they're man-made. And this is the part where this isn't necessarily about the judicial system. This is about your own personal development, your own personal growth. When you start looking at the challenges and the things that you face in your life, are those things that you can control, those things that are outside of your control. Because I'm a firm believer in controlling what you can control. But before I went to jail, if I would have focused on getting a job instead of focusing on the money aspect, I probably wouldn't have had these post-jail challenges. Because there goes a story for you guys. But when I was getting sentenced, I actually got sentenced 2 to 5 upstate. So have you guys talked about sentencing guidelines? So the way these sentencing guidelines work, a judge, my lawyer and the DA negotiate and they come up with a plea deal. And the plea deal was 2 to 4 years upstate. I was already on probation, so they were going to cancel the probation and transfer me to state parole, and I would get 2 to 4 years. For some reason, the judge said he didn't want to accept that. He's never heard of probation being canceled for parole, so he didn't want to accept that deal. They had to figure something out. We'll take a recess. So now I'm sitting there, and the DA comes up to my lawyer, and he tells him, well, you can just take it to trial and kick my butt. He didn't say butt. He cussed. And I started looking at my lawyer like, what does that mean? So the judge comes back out and he tells the lawyer and the DA say, we're going to go up on the back number and we say 2 to 5. Does that appease the courts? The judge said yes. I was saying, well, there it goes then. I signed the paper. I didn't realize until I was released from prison that because I did 14 months, I still had 3 years and 8 months to walk off before I was a free man. So basically what happens is when you go to jail, whatever number that you don't do in jail, you have on parole or probation. The difference between parole and probation is when you go to the county jail, parole is when you go upstate. So because they went up on my tail number, I ended up doing a whole nother year on parole, which means a whole nother year without a passport. This passport didn't change my life. So I realized very quickly that how out of control everything in my life was. Because the judge said no, he wasn't going to accept the 2 to 4, I ended up having to do a whole nother year and wasting some time of my life. Luckily, I did what I needed to do while I was on parole, so my parole officer wasn't, well, he was nice, for lack of better words, he was nice. But again, I know people where if you get a parole restriction or you get a violation, you end up going back to jail, and all that time that you did on the streets, on that number, you end up having to do on the inside.